Tingles with flyby. Hello, my tinglelings. Thank you for joining me today. I had a request from one of my tinglelings to talk about communication in relationships and discussing how my love and I get communication to work in our relationship. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. As many of you know, I was previously married before, and the communication in that relationship was not great. But part of that, I think, comes down to partner selection, first of all. And then obviously there's things that you can do once you're in a relationship, but because of my experiences, I am gonna come at it a little bit more from that angle, because that's more what my experience was okay, I don't like who I chose or what I did in that first relationship, so we choose something different in my next relationship. But part of it was not just who I chose, but how I chose to be in my next relationship. There's a really good website that I read while I was actually still in my last relationship. It's called, I don't remember exactly what the website's actually called, but on there they discuss this concept called the policy of joint agreement, and it discusses basically how in a relationship you shouldn't do anything without enthusiastic consent from both parties. And they talk about how it's important with that to understand that you kind of have two selves within yourself. One self that is incredibly selfish and just is only completely thinking about yourself, and then a self that's also selfless and only thinking about the other person, only cares what's good for them. And that the best things that you can do in a relationship are those where you can have both of yourselves happy for both of you, basically. And so, and part of that is basically, if you don't have enthusiastic agreement with something that's presented as an idea, you don't just go along with it. So it's not about, oh well, he really likes green, so, but green makes me sick, but no, like this time I'm just gonna sacrifice and do it for him, because that basically just ends up building up resentment. And so it's important in your relationship to basically, it's okay to be selfish, and I think that's the number one thing in my advice, I guess, is that it's okay to be selfish and it's okay to express your selfish feelings. Because part of loving somebody else, and I don't know, I think part of being in a relationship is being able to share the worst parts of yourself, not just the best parts, because if you're going to be together with somebody for, you know, a lifetime, you're not always going to be at your best. And this is something that I actually, we're actually making a little bit of traction with my love, because it's part of with how he was raised and everything like that. He has a very hard time thinking of himself and just, you know, do it like he's okay if he's doing something selfless, but if it's something that feels a little bit selfish to him, he has a really hard time expressing that. But if you don't actually express those feelings, when you feel something a bit selfish, it will build up resentment and come out in another way. And so it's not good. And so to me, the most important thing is just like, it's easiest if communication is direct, if it's honest and open. So I don't believe in lying to protect anybody's feelings. I just think however you feel at the moment is how you feel. And if the relationship can't handle that, I don't think, well, anyway, for me, that would not be a relationship worth staying in, because to me, it should all be out there. Nothing should be off limits. But to me, yeah, number one is that, like, there should be no lying, not to protect feelings, not to protect anything else. And, I mean, part of that is really important for me in my love, is, as many of you know, he has something like borderline, not exactly, but, and so for him, there's lots of times where he's kind of dissociating, can't really connect that I am the person that I am. He's seeing me more as a figure like his dad was. But so he'll ask me things, and if there's ever been, you know, or he might be asking me for reassurance, like, how, you know, like, do I look really bad right now? If I tell him not what I think, then, you know, he'll pick, you know, people can pick up when you're not being genuine, and it creates a, you know, disconnecting, uncertain feeling. Whereas for him, I can, or, you know, he might wonder, like, oh, am I being controlling right now? And I can tell him, no, you're not being controlling. But then if he does something that is a little bit controlling, I'll be like, now you're being controlling, so that he can understand that I'm not saying anything to try and just placate him. I'm saying it because it's what I actually think. And so that he can trust what I say. Because I think being honest is a huge part of people being able to trust what you say. And so if you always tell the truth, then I think, you know, that just makes it easier, because then just what you say can, you know, be taken. And that's the thing is, yeah, sometimes it's gonna get you into an argument. Sometimes it's gonna be taken the wrong way by the other person, and that's okay. Basically, it's okay to fighting, misunderstanding, miscommunication. That's a part of a relationship. It doesn't show that, you know, things are really bad or that there's a failure. It just means, okay, this is the bump in the road that we've hit right now. Time to work through this one and get on to the next one. And yeah, I mean, so that's part of what I have done differently in this relationship that I didn't in my last relationship. I was much more focused on being selfless in my last relationship, and so I had a lot of these feelings of my needs not getting met. But part of that was because I was not expressing them. Part of that was because I think if I did express them, I don't think he would have cared that much, really. I don't think he would have tried to meet my needs. Because he's the person that he is. But anyway. So I think it's important for those who are looking at choosing a partner to choose a partner who you feel comfortable communicating with. I mean, for me, that's the number one thing, and for me, if somebody lies to me, is not honest with me, that's a real big deal breaker. Because I think honesty is the number one thing, and it's honesty across everything, you know, even if I'm not gonna like what they have to say. And so my love has that inclination to kind of be that way, but with his mental illness, it's a lot to kind of work his way through and all that, so that's a work in progress. But, yeah, I think just be direct. It's actually more simple than it seems. It can be difficult sometimes to say something very direct. And I don't think it always necessarily has to be, like, direct, like, okay, well, I'm just gonna say exactly what I think. If you feel apprehension about what you want to say, it's okay to make it known that you feel apprehension about what you're saying. And I remember I used to do this, I don't do that much with my love, but I used to do it with my best friend, where I would let her know that there was something I wanted to tell her, but I wouldn't tell her what it was, and so I would just have her guess what it was. And so if you watched I did this, kind of that, but me being the other side, when I was, did a video on, like, comforting a best friend coming out as gay. Because that's something I really related to, especially as a teen, that is easier for me to not have to actually put words, like, out of my own mouth, but just to say yes or no, like, kind of as people got closer to what I was actually trying to express. And so I think sometimes if you're not in a confident state where you can say exactly what you think, you can kind of say, oh, well, there's something I want to tell you, but I feel, I don't feel comfortable saying it. And so then if you say something like that, most often they're going to start asking you questions. Or you can just say, well, why don't you ask me some questions, and I'm not trying to, make you be a mind reader. I just feel really, bashful about what I'm saying. And, oh, my tummy is going crazy. I don't know what you guys can hear on there. I know my other microphone always picks up my belly sounds. I'm not sure about this one, because my 3DO is currently off for repairs right now. If you noticed on one of my videos maybe a couple, the sound was completely dead on the right side. Anyway, off on a tangent right there. Oh, my belly is going crazy. Oh, the life of an ASMRtist. Anyway, especially because I need to record. It's so loud. Okay, anyway. But yeah, I think that's just the number one thing, is just, it's okay. It's also time, like, sometimes I'm an introvert, and so sometimes I just need time to think. I cannot think if we're in the middle of an argument. I'm just kind of, like, reeling and just, spitting out what's, like, the first thing in my brain is not working at all. And a lot of time I just need to step away, get some time to organize my thoughts, and then I can come back and actually have a more reasonable discussion. you know, people have their things about not going to bed angry and all these things, and I think having any sort of rule like that isn't really reasonable necessarily. Sometimes you need a good night's sleep to just wake up and be like, what were we even arguing about? And, or, you know, sometimes you need to discuss it in the morning, but I just think, yeah. So, be honest. It's okay to be selfish. That doesn't mean if you recognize that your partner is always being selfish and never has a selfless side, that you should stay with that or take that. Yeah, abuse is nothing to accept, and people don't have to lay hands on you for you to be abused. That's something nobody ever told me, and I didn't learn until after we actually split up that I had been abused. So, just want to put that out there. You can be abused without ever having any physical or sexual abuse. Emotional abuse is very real, and it's not okay. So, it's a bit harder to identify, and harder, it's not as, well, anyway. As a woman, I mean, I think probably even would be worse for a man experiencing emotional abuse, but even for a woman experiencing emotional abuse, you will probably not be believed by a lot of people because it's just not seen as a lot of an issue in our society, even though it is. Anyway, so I believe you. And my belly is going crazy. So, policy of joint agreement. There's a lot more that they talk about on there, love busters and all these other things, which are really great. So I could talk more about some other things to do with relationships if you guys are interested in more about that. But my key take home on communication is nothing is off the table. Sometimes just take a step away, and it is okay to be selfish. But just make sure you're not being abused by someone else always being selfish and never caring about you. So, those are my tips for you. I'm gonna go and try and settle this belly down. And you all have a lovely day. If you have any more questions or requests for this type of video, let me know down in the comments. And I will talk to you later. Goodbye, my tinglelings. Thanks for